am I doing? I'm talking to an empty telephone.
I don't understand.
Because there was a dead man on the other end of this fucking line.
Hello and welcome to Corona Cinema. In these trying times where everything's shut down, including movie theatres, we decided to create our own virtual cinema and screen 4 films each week based around a particular theme. Fittingly, we start with isolation films, now playing The Martian, 127 Hours, Moon, and The Lighthouse. 3.5 white guys trapped inside all day. Of course, we started a podcast. I'm your host, Leon Waite, and I'll be joined every week by Mason Carr.
Hello.
Ross Herbert.
Good evening.
And Matty Westcott.
Hi.
Right, going to start with Mason, and you picked The Lighthouse. 2 lighthouse keepers try to maintain their sanity whilst living on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1890s. Directed by Robert Eggers, it was nominated for 1 Oscar, cinematography. Mason, why'd you pick this film?
Well, obviously, like you said, for the cinematography, you've got the black and white colour with the square frame. But I don't think that's the main reason that I enjoyed the film. I mean, you've got Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe's acting alone, which sort of like steals the show, and that just makes the film what it is. You've got the like sailor mythology with the sirens and everything that you sort of sees on the beach and stuff like that. But for me, it was more so like the experience that I felt with the film. It's where when I walked out of the cinema, I was sort of like, yeah, that's definitely like an unforgettable film. Particularly, it was more so the scene alone when the lighthouse opens at the end. I just remember looking around at the cinema and like all my mates' faces, just like everyone wanted to look away, but everyone was glued directly up to the screen.
I think it's one of those films where smart people than me can analyse all the deeper meanings, like the biblical meanings and shit like that. But just purely in terms of the spectacle, what the screen looked like, you say about the narrow frame, the black and white, all those things, and just having 2 guys in this environment for an hour and a half was just interesting to me. 2 very weird performances, weird dialogue. Go over to Matty. Matty, is this the first time you've seen the film?
Yeah, one thing, like, I was wondering, was he crazy when he turned up on the island already? Because he'd literally been there, like, a day and he was having, like, hallucinations. Or is it meant to be the island that's made him crazy?
What, the Willem Dafoe character?
No, the other one.
I take it as... he said he had an alcohol problem beforehand.
Yeah.
So I took it as that was his biggest issue. This was kind of like a rehab. That's kind of how I read the film. This is kind of like a rehab for him, going on this island, isolating himself away from the drink. That's why he doesn't want to take the alcohol at the start of the film when they first sit down for dinner. So I take it that was his issue before the film. But yeah, I don't know, maybe he was crazy beforehand as well. I think it is meant to be the island. It's kind of mysterious. Mason,
probably what I quite liked how it literally just went away from any kind of like special effects. It tried to literally just go backwards in essence, and just kind of like focus on the actual story, which I thought was quite interesting. Just the dialogue and I think they still did use like when he fucking pulled the sledgehammer down on the other guy's head and just exploded his head everywhere. Like they still used, so it's not like it was all the way back where they didn't use anything, and they blended it quite nicely. And even the framing as well, I quite like that. And I think the thing that stood out the most was the sound that they used, because as they're going in, it was like a ship's kind of like horn, but that kind of played throughout, even when their ships weren't. And that's quite ominous. And I didn't really like sitting in my room in the dark watching that film. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, you say sitting in your room, Ross. I believe you didn't see it in cinema as well. You saw it at home. Did that have a negative impact, do you think, or you still think you got the full kind of effect of the film?
I think I don't know. When I watched it, what I found annoying was the noises in the film are a lot louder than the dialogue. But maybe that's just because I was watching at home. But I don't think it negatively impacted what I was watching, though. It was still a quality film in my eyes.
And did you find the dialogue quite hard to get over? Like, it's very of its time. Sometimes it's hard to understand, but I kind of took it as when I couldn't understand exactly what he was saying, just the emotion both of them were bringing. Particularly that one scene where he proper like shouts at him, kind of berates him, Willem Dafoe's character.
Yeah.
No, I don't even understand what he's fully saying. Just the emotion of it was quite powerful in itself.
Yeah, and you know what he's on about sometimes, but you know he's like reciting something. It makes it really interesting, and both the characters are so good. But it's kind of which one of them's crazy? Are they both crazy? Are you crazy? Is it real? It's those kind of aspects that are really interesting.
I thought
I don't think.
it was a pretty funny film, though. Matty, you had a thought?
Like I don't think like you're meant to like understand everything they're saying.
No.
'Cause, like even like when they're both like drunk, and as you say, Willem Dafoe just unloads some massive monologue on him, and obviously not talking about whether he likes his cooking or not, and he's just like, "All right, I guess your cooking's not that bad." I feel like I don't know if that was an attempt to be funny or not, because like I think
laughed.
normally I would have laughed, but I didn't laugh because I was just scared of Willem Dafoe.
I think that's an interesting thing that's going on. Like, it's quite a scary film for long periods and a bit jarring, but at the same time, it has those moments where it's weirdly funny, like him just farting all the time. Mason, do you have any thoughts on that?
Similar to what Matt was saying, I remember when I watched the film, I watched it with 3 other people, and when we discussed it straight after, I thought like it felt like 2 of us had watched different films what the other 2 had seen, because I feel like as you watch the film, you pick up different dialogue each time, and then you sort of understand the film a little bit more.
Okay, so if you had to give that a rating out of 10, starting with you, Mason, what would you do?
I'd give it an 8. I think the acting and the cinematography alone deserves a high rating.
Matty?
It was like an 8.3. Like I reckon it felt quite slow, but it's meant to be slow because you're meant to show you're being bored alone on an island. So
Yeah, I'd say maybe 8.5. It's very ambitious for such a small budget. What they've done with such a small cast is really, really good. I mean, the way it's filmed, obviously the way it is cramped makes you feel cramped as well, like the aspect ratio. So yeah, 8.5. I'll give that one.
Yeah, I'd give it an 8 as well. I think I heard some people say it's like more suited to be in a play, like having 2 people in one kind of setting for the whole time. But in the same way, I like having different kind of movies, and this is very different to what you're going to see anywhere else. Like, I can't really think of an example of anything that's similar. So yeah, good film. Okay, moving on. Ross, you picked
127 hours.
Yeah, let's just get the IMDb synopsis up. So, a mountain climber becomes trapped under a boulder while canyoneering alone near Moab, Utah, and resorts to desperate measures in order to survive. Directed by Danny Boyle, nominated for 6 Oscars, didn't win any of them, but nominated for Best Picture and Best Leading Actor for James Franco. Ross, why did you pick this film?
Well, I think it's James Franco's performance alone is so good in it. I find the film really interesting how it's literally, well, the bulk of the film is in this one location, a rock, but you still stay interested and compelled when watching it. It's really well done how they've done that. Yeah, it's James Franco as well. He just does his excellent job.
The weird thing is, I saw this film, I think like a year after it came out. Obviously, I was like 12 or something. Didn't really understand it, and I didn't really remember much of it when I watched it again today. But I had no idea that's how it started, with like all the split screen, all the crowds and stuff, and it was all upbeat. Here he goes, hiking through a desert, climbing mountains. Oh, he meets 2 girls, they jump in a pool. Oh, this is fun. Kind of forgot all about all that stuff. Like, I just assumed it was just 90 minutes of him trying to get a boulder off his arm.
Yeah, it's weird. You jump right into the film, and that's how it starts, and you're like, well, what's going on?
yeah, like draws you with all this happiness and then takes a bit of a turn. Matty, what did you think?
I knew what the film was about because I've known about this film for like ages, but I just never watched it. And then that whole time you're going through it, like you say, you felt like it was like a happy, it's going along. I couldn't help feeling like it was a slight kind of like out of tune happiness. And I was waiting for something to go wrong. But and so while they're doing, like, I felt like it was going to come, like when he's with the girls or when he's running or when he's on his bike. But like, I knew that it wasn't going to be that because I knew what happened. I knew it was with The Rock. And I think they kind of alluded that, like, he stacked it off his bike right at the start, and it makes you think it's like really bad. And he just takes a selfie and then moves on. Like, I guess they're trying to show it's like a resilient character. But no, I actually really like the film. Not gonna lie, it's genuinely like a jarring realization of like because it actually happened. It's genuinely like a disgusting. I couldn't sit down while I was watching it, even all the way through it. Not just when he was like hacking through his own arm. And Jesus Christ! And I like the visuals as well in terms of like him having hallucinations and like losing track of where he is, even though he hasn't moved. And he keeps thinking he's getting away or he's not. Or like, especially what they did with like when he was trying to cut his own nerve, like they changed the audios hugely, and then you almost like it was just as like unpleasant to watch, like signifying partially how that would have felt, I guess. And like, I don't think I've ever had my TV's ever made that kind of noise during a film before.
I think if that character could relate to one of us, it'd probably be you cycling 17 miles through some desert.
Doing some fucking stupid shit, getting himself in trouble. Yeah, probably.
Mason, what do you think of the film?
I was similar to you. I haven't seen the film for a few years. I watched it probably about 3 years ago, maybe. But after rewatching it, I didn't realize how like different the editing was for the film. In my head, it was quite like standard. But then, like you said, you have the things where there's like 3 frames on the screen at once. There's a footage just outside of like the set and stuff like that. And yeah, that was actually quite effective. At first, when I started to watch the film again, I was like, what? It proper threw me. But I think it works. And especially the scene when he's recording himself pretending he was on a TV show. That was that point that stuck out to me quite a lot.
Oh yeah, I really like that bit, to be fair.
I like that bit.
I'm watching him slowly go crazy.
Yeah, how he keeps Danny Boyle manages to keep it like a Danny Boyle film, even though it's just a guy with a rock. It's really well done.
I think like the idea that even though it's like a terrible, terrible thing, but he's using partially humor to get through it. Like even when he's filming himself and he's talking like this and he's talking to himself. And it also went quite more into like stuff he's done in his life that he probably wasn't happy with, or how he thinks he handled. Like it could have quite easily become you only spent half the time at the Rock and the rest of the time could have been flashbacks. And I think he balanced that really well, where he didn't do too much, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a good lesson from the film is that tell people where you're going. Because he realizes, I've been speaking to my family. Like it shows him ignoring the call from his sister, the call from his mum, and now here you are trapped in some remote area. No one knows where you are. No one's even going to report you missing because you haven't spoken to anyone. There's a decent lesson from the film. What's your thoughts?
Sorry?
Any more thoughts?
I mean, yeah, it's I'd say just the acting is so good in it for James Franco. Do you know who won the Oscar that year? Because he got nominated. 2011.
That's Colin Firth. King's
Speech.
Okay.
He's good at that. But yeah, James Franco, I think he probably deserved it for that year. Quality.
Mate,
I think it's quite hard.
What do you think of James Franco? It's quite a weird career, and he's done quite a few good performances in comedies where he's been nominated for Golden Globes. He's done Spider-Man, quite a unique career. I think he's actually probably a better actor than he gets credit for.
It's quite hard for me, like, to take the Pineapple Express and
interview
the Spider-Man shroud off him when I'm looking at him trying to like do a serious film. And like even when I've seen like supposedly some of his more like even Disaster Artist, I still can't tell if that's a serious film for him. Like, but then as in Tommy Wiseau is so crazy anyway. But in terms of just the film as well, because I struggle to like know if that's like good acting for him, just because I find his face funny, But like I knew it was a good film because like even when it was right at the end, I just wanted it to keep going. Like I wanted him to actually like go and find like his ex-girlfriend. I wanted to go meet his parents. I just wanted more and more just them to tie up those knots that they'd given us. And I think they ended it at the right point. Like if he literally just walked out that canyon with his arm just held there and just like then it ended it there, I would have been annoyed. But I think they left it on long enough for him to find the people, get the helicopter coming down, and then they talked about the real guy. I think they handled that really nicely. And even though I wanted them to go talk about him meeting his family and the ex-girlfriend and stuff, that probably wasn't even that necessary. And it's good that they didn't. They just left the hope of that.
Okay, cool. Let's go around, get some ratings. Ross, what would you give this out of 10?
7.8.
Matty?
I give it 8.5, higher than Lighthouse, I think, for me. Just the feeling at the end.
Mason?
I'll go for a 7.5. I'll go for a 7.5.
Ooh.
I think I'd go for an 8. Okay. Next film, this is Moon, Matty's pick. Astronaut Sam Bell has a quintessentially personal encounter toward the end of his 3-year stint on the moon, where he, working alongside his computer Gertie, sends back to Earth parcels of a resource that has helped diminish our planet's power problems. That's dense. Directed by Duncan Jones, nominated for no Oscars, but won a BAFTA for Outstanding Debut by a British Writer for Duncan Jones. Matty, why did you pick this film?
I think it's generally probably the most overlooked science fiction film of the 2000s, easily. And I like it. The film literally just takes its time because it's about a dude who spends fucking 3 years on the moon by himself. It's not going to be a film that's like all cannons blazing, trying to like really progress the story really quickly. I really like how there's almost a futility to the story. Like they have no idea because the whole balance is thrown out of muck halfway through the film, and he has no idea. He has no place on Earth. He has no place on the moon, and he doesn't know what to do, you know. And he's like, and I really like that struggle between him and then basically his younger self, because it's more or less him when he's spent 3 years and he's dealt with his anger issues and he's more or less ready to go home versus him when he's still got the anger issues. Because one of the things they talked about earlier in the film is that he went to the moon because he was having relationship issues and they thought it'd be good for him. And then watching Sam Rockwell literally play himself, knowing how to wind himself up, like on screen at the same time, I think that's like some of the most underrated work he's done. And the whole film was on 5 million as well. And I think there's not a thing that you would actually change about it in terms of the visual effects either. So that will literally like just stand the test of time. Yeah.
I think it was interesting watching it for the first time. Like, I didn't know where it was going to go. Like, at first I thought, oh, maybe the Kevin Spacey, the computer program, that might be some kind of evil, sinister thing. The way they showed the weird kind of smiley faces things, I kind of thought that might be where this is going. He's going to turn evil. And when he wouldn't let him out of the ship at that point. And then even when you saw his clone come onto the ship, I wasn't even sure if that was actually a clone and it wasn't just his imagination. And it's just like him confronting his older self or his younger self and then kind of battling between each other. I thought that was the interesting thing. Do you remember watching it for the first time, what you thought?
Because he was having hallucinations before he even crashed. So I was like, I'm trying to figure out if he's crazy. And I really did like how they filmed it when he crashed. It looked like that he had just been recovered from the wreckage, woken up and tried to go about as normal. But you're actually watching the new clone being woken up. And I just thought that was probably some of the cleverest writing they could have done for that film. And also going back on the robot thing, I think it's actually a really nice change of pace, having an artificial intelligence that just isn't trying to kill humans. I thought that was really nice. I had like Kevin Spacey at the end when he just offers himself to have his memory wiped. It's like you're basically saying, just kill me for your own good, you know, because he wants what's best for Sam. Even though he has the two priorities of making the company happy and looking after Sam, Sam was the priority. And I think that kind of then just reflects underlying messages about the film, that the company is caring more about bloody helium that they're trying to get from the moon's surface than they do about their own employees, to the point that they're exploiting them.
Right, Ross, you said you weren't too high on the film before we started. What are your reasons?
I think for a film with such a, relatively small budget, it's very ambitious. And I think it kind of shows in some parts. I mean, the visuals, there wasn't any scenery or much that was very interesting. I mean, obviously outside the moon, what more like can you do? But yeah, I didn't find the character that interesting either. He had like his struggles, but himself, I don't find him that interesting. Yeah, and the dialogue, I didn't find that strong either.
For me, I think most of it worked for me. I thought it was really good. The only thing was kind of the dramatic moments didn't really hit me. Like I never felt like, oh, that's an incredible moment kind of thing. Even when he's leaving the ship at the end, it didn't quite build up to like
Yeah.
that I wanted to, but like didn't really affect my enjoyment of the film because everything else was so smart and it seemed like a more plausible thing, like a sci-fi film that could actually happen. Like cloning is a bit of a stretch, but just the idea of these companies going onto the moon to harvest energy sources and
Yeah, it's a really good idea.
exploiting their workers in this way to where they can't be asked to spend money to train people, so they're just cloning them instead.
Yeah, and I think like it's really good that how they did it, where you're like, is he crazy or is it like a clone or what is this? Then I think after that it kind of loses its like impact and like stagnates on like a dramatic level.
I think like you follow it with the character's motivation because like when he realizes there's nothing to go home to, and if he stays, the cleanup crew are going to clean him up. That's what they're essentially there for. I think you just kind of feel the futility of the character's like frustration, and I think there aren't too many moments where it hits hard in one go. I think like when he finds out that the escape pod that he's meant to get into to go home just incinerates him, like and kill. That's where all the other, I think 5 clones have gone. That could have hit harder. But I think when he's in the ship and he manages to make a live call home, and he finds his daughter's 15 and his wife's dead, and then he sees the actual Sam Rockwell walk in as like the actual confirmation that he's fucked, basically. I thought that was quite sad, and he just breaks down, and I've probably found that was like the hardest hitting moment of the film.
Well, his performance was really good. I think of all the, obviously he didn't get nominated for any Oscars. I think at least he should have got a nomination. I think that's one of the biggest snubs.
Yeah, I think it's really underrated. Like his acting in that is literally, because the other thing with Kevin Spacey didn't film or record any of his roles until Sam had finished everything. Kevin Spacey came in once everything was done, said, actually, yeah, I quite like this, and then gave half a day, recorded all of his bits, and then moved off. So Sam was literally in a room by himself reading off cue markers and did all of, this is basically just him. This is his baby. Because he never spoke to anyone else, which is quite crazy.
Having to do that work with portraying multiple clones at different stages of this kind of experiment, have to confront his own kind of demons and his own mind state. I thought that's some of the best acting you can get, to be honest.
Yeah.
Of course, he won an Oscar about 10 years later, but I think this might have been a missed opportunity. Mason, what do you think?
I think I'm quite similar to Ross, to where I think I struggled to like engage with the main character. Really, I don't know what it was for me. Like the first section of the film, I enjoyed quite a lot because it was sort of the mystery around it. So I was similar to you. I thought that the robot was going to be evil. It was almost like expected for that to happen. And I like how the film immediately sort of hits it straight away, and he starts hallucinating when he sees that woman sat down in the ship. But other than that, I felt like I just got quite bored of the film after that point. Even when once he found the clone of himself, I was a bit confused. I was excited to see who would be a clone, who wasn't. And then when you find out both are, that sort of felt like where the film peaked for me. Like the whole story of him allowing the newer clone to go home over him, because he knows that regardless, like his body's only meant to last 3 years. After that point, when I didn't really seem to care, or I didn't even feel that touched once the new Sam was sent home.
Yeah, it's kind of mixed feelings across the board in that one. Matty, what would you give out of 10?
As a film, I don't think it hits as hard as the other two. Probably give it 7.9.
Ross?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't hit as hard. Not just as compelling or interesting as the other two, so maybe a 7.2.
Fair enough. Mason?
I'd probably give it a 7. I think the main reason, I feel like I probably need to rewatch the film, because how I watched it a day after I watched The Martian, and my standards were so high for that film, I feel like I struggled to enjoy it.
It's definitely not like as exciting, you know.
The story itself is still quite different. And I like how there is a difference where it's not just one guy stranded on a planet. For some reason, I'm just not too sure why, but I just didn't really seem to enjoy the film.
I watched it right after The Martian as well. And it's like you're watching a $100 million budget film, then you watch a $5 million budget film, and the standard kind of drops with it.
And I think Matt Damon just brings a charisma to a character you just can't help.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Sam Rockwell's meant to be playing someone who's a little bit he's someone who's very good at a job, so he's a little bit boring, you know, and he's got a certain sensitivity to the character that might not be very desirable.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 7 as well. I think some really interesting ideas, a lot of promise for that was the director's first film. There's clearly a lot of promise there, and Sam Rockwell's performance, I think, is one of the best I've seen in recent times. And speaking of The Martian, that's my pick. An astronaut becomes stranded on Mars after his team assume him dead and must rely on his ingenuity to find a way to signal to Earth that he is alive. Directed by Ridley Scott, nominated for 7 Oscars, didn't win any of them, including Best Picture and leading actor for Matt Damon. And I picked this film, I think it's probably top 15, maybe top 20 films I've seen this decade. I think I particularly like it because I'm not a massive fan of space movies, but this is different in that it's pretty much just a problem-solving exercise throughout the film. It's, okay, I'm stranded on Mars, I need to grow food, how do I do that? Let's do this. I need to produce water. How do I do that? Then something happens with that water and the experiment fails. How do I overcome that? What have I done wrong? And it's just a series of little moments like that. And Matt Damon's charisma and his dry sense of humor, his sarcasm brings that to life. And you're saying about Sam Rockwell in Moon, he's not given that amount of freedom, mainly because he's a clone to begin with. But anyway, he hasn't got that kind of personality, whereas Matt Damon's allowed to drop these kind of sarcastic lines throughout the film. I picked out a few of them that were my favorite. Mars will come to fear my botany powers. I'm going to have to science the shit out of this. And Mark Watney, Space Pirate.
Space Pirate.
Yeah, Space Pirate.
That's just a few lines that he gets to drop throughout the film that keep the energy going. And I think a good thing about the direction, it knows when to go to the people on Earth, go to NASA, see how they're trying to bring him back. I think that's kind of the biggest difference between this film and the other 3 films, in that you kind of it's a bit more breezy. You have Matt Damon isolated on Mars, but you also have plenty of scenes with Donald Glover, with Jeff Daniels, with Kristen Wiig, and the director kind of knows when to go back down to Earth, see what they're doing, and then have some time with Matt Damon. Mason, what do you think of the film?
I haven't seen the film again for a few years, sort of like 127 hours. But watching it back, it's such a refreshing film to watch. Like I said, Matt Damon's acting itself was just like a joy to watch on screen, basically. And how I think what I enjoyed a lot about the film is that there wasn't much of a negative tone throughout, even though realistically what should have happened should be like catastrophic. He just doesn't seem to let it get to him, and he's cheerful throughout. There's a few moments where he dips, and that's when he allows his acting skills to sort of shine through as well. But other than that, his like happiness drives the film.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting thing. He managed it perfectly, to be honest. Like, he had all those sarcastic lines, and then I think when the first moment when he's really sad, I think it's when his crops are destroyed, when it's like a vacuum of air or something. I don't understand the science, but he loses all his crops. It's like, okay, what do I do now? Another problem to overcome. Ross, what did you make of the film?
What I really liked about the film was that it's obviously, if you were to listen to people from NASA talk, you wouldn't be able to understand the words realistically. But what they've done with it, they've dumbed it down long enough for us to understand, but also made it still sound realistic at the same time, which I like. And obviously, Matt Damon's so like he's quality in it, but it's even like the little characters like Childish Gambino. He's really good in it as well. It's just all of it adds up to make this like excellent film. Visuals are stunning as well.
Matt, you got any thoughts?
I did really like the film. It was a very good film. I think there was only a few bits I didn't like was when it didn't seem to flow very well in the middle when they jumped from Mark Watney being by himself at whatever weight he's like 220 pounds, and then it cuts to him being 170 pounds immediately. And then they did some kind of half convincing CGI effects to make it look like he'd lost loads of weight.
Months later, wasn't it?
I feel like they didn't particularly need to do that, because I feel like it made like it seemed like we left him for ages and then came back, and then it didn't really flow at the same time. And I think they're more just like showing that they could make him look like he was really underweight. I feel like they didn't need to, especially compared to like a film like Lighthouse, where they could literally they don't need to prove themselves with CGI. If that makes any sense. I get it because it's like a science fiction film and they kind of need to show more than they say, Otherwise, we just go see a play, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I felt like it dragged a little bit. But other than that, I didn't really like it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. It didn't really affect my watching of the film, but when it does do that little jump over a few months to when Matt Damon's skinnier, and then when they're just about to perform the rescue, for that, that was probably the weakest.
It didn't really show like a process.
Yeah, and having like several cities across the world gathered, like thousands of people gathered, waiting for him to arrive. I thought it was a bit kind of didn't need that. Like I get it. It makes the ending more satisfying. It's more of a spectacle, but it kind of felt a bit I don't know what the word is. A bit false, really. To have that many people. Yeah, a bit cheesy. I get
A bit of cheese.
You're enjoying them. Yeah, I get it. Mason, you got any more thoughts?
Not really, to be honest. I agree with what Matty said, where it comes up with the sort of 7 months later part, because how I feel like for the entire part of the film before that, you're with him for every step.
Yeah.
He makes, and then next thing you know, it's just 7 months later. I understand it, because at that point there was nothing really to show the audience. He would have just been rationing, eating, and waiting for the ship to get there. So I can see why they had to do it, but I feel like they could have maybe just a slightly different way of going about it.
Yeah, like if they had to choose between doing 7 months later and showing how skinny he got, or just doing a more or less believable montage of him just traveling the 7 months, or at least just spacing the film better in between scenes with Earth, I'd rather they'd done that than what they did. But,
yeah, I agree. I mean, the film speeds up in certain parts anyway, just to quickly progress certain areas. So I don't see why they couldn't have done a quick montage of him inside, quickly just fluttering about, eating his potatoes.
Yeah, I thought
also
go on.
I kind of like how it's like a testament to how resourceful one person can be. Like it's making you like all the knowledge like he works off is more or less literally just in his head. Like all the different alphabets that he could use, all the different ways that you would grow fucking potatoes by vegetative propagation. Like I just like it just makes you want to pay more attention in school. That's the only thing. I remember sitting there just thinking, I don't know anything. Like I'd be ruined on the first day. I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, I know.
It can make you feel smart, but dumb at the same time. Smart in that they're breaking down complex information that I'll never be able to think of myself into terms that I can understand. But then you feel dumb because like you say, day one, if you're presented with a situation where you need to grow food or you need to produce water, it's like, I have no idea. I have no skills. Kind of makes being an astronaut cool. Basically, shows them to be as intelligent as they are.
Also puts you off being an astronaut as well.
Oh yeah, fuck going to space and you fucking die.
I also thought there were some funny moments, even aside from Matt Damon's character, sprinkled in throughout the film. Like Donald Glover's scene, obviously, breaking down. That's another example of them breaking down complicated information in a little set piece like that with him with the pen. And the way he goes to Jeff Daniels, you are? He's like, president of NASA. Little things like that. Them saying to Wong, they needed something to be done quicker. It's like this takes 60 days. All right, you'll do it in 28 days. Cool.
Yeah.
Little things like that just added a bit more humor to the whole thing. It just made the thing flow nicely for such what could be a very dour film of someone stranded on Mars, which could be quite a technical film. They managed to kind of convey the information in a fun, vibrant way, and I thought it worked perfectly, to be honest. Matt Damon's best film? Anyone?
No.
What'd you say?
Possibly, yeah.
It's not his best performance.
What's his best performance in your opinion?
Departed.
Ross?
Probably his best performance. He has a proper solo in this film.
Mason?
He's like allowed to shine in this film. It's his film.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to start. I'll give this an 8.5 out of 10. Matty?
8.6, I reckon.
Ross?
8.5, yeah, 8.5, I'd say.
Mason?
Go on, I'll be the third one. 8.5. I'll go for 8.5.
Okay, moving on. So we're going to rank the 4 films that we've had screening in our Corona Cinema this week. I'll start with Matty. Want to go first?
In terms of like what I'd want to watch again, I'd go Martian, 127 Hours, Moon, Lighthouse. So Lighthouse was good, but it wasn't a very pleasant experience. Like it's not like a feel-good film, which is fair. Like that is not supposed to be. So
Ross?
Personally, I put The Lighthouse at the top. What they've done with just two actors and such a small budget compared to the others is just it keeps it interesting throughout as well. So yeah, Lighthouse at the top, then The Martian, The 127 Hours, then Moon.
Mason?
I've got The Martian at the top, then The Lighthouse, 127 hours, and then Moon. For me, I don't know. I can't see the rewatchability of Moon at the moment, especially compared to.
Yeah.
I think like Lighthouse. It was hard to choose between Martian and Lighthouse at the top because Martian is easy. It's a feel-good film. I could put it on, have a laugh. Then Lighthouse, I feel like I need to sit down and analyze it. Then at the same time, I just feel like extremely freaked out as you're watching it.
Yeah, I've got the same order. Martian first, Lighthouse second, 127 hours, then Moon. I like all the films. I think The Martian comes out on top primarily as, like you say, for the rewatchability. Because the way the film flows, the humor just adds to the film as a whole. So yeah, I'd agree with that one. Can you name the two actors they feature in two or more of the films?
Benedict Wong is one of them.
Yeah. And there's one more. You don't need to tell me don't need to tell the actor actually. Just the character. If you can name the character, they feature in two of these films. Hard one.
Is it Charles Gambino?
Nah.
No.
It's the girl, isn't it, from 127?
Yeah. What's the other film she's in?
I don't know.
She's in The Martian.
Yeah.
The one of the girls in 127. She's Johansson in the Martian, part of the crew.
She's the one that gives Sebastian Stan, isn't she? At the end of the film.
Yeah. Okay, finally, to bring this inaugural podcast to an end, the Kevin Garnett Award for a sports person who could successfully transition into acting and be in this film, in honor of KG's performance in Uncut Gems. So you're going to pick a sports person who you think could become an actor and be in your film. I'll start with May.
Not gonna lie, I struggled with this. I picked Timmy Thibodeau. He's a powerlifter who's got a bit of a temper on him, but he's had a YouTube presence long enough that you've seen him not lose his temper. What's it called when you get less angry? He's become less angry as it goes. That's the only real character that I could find that he'd probably be more suited to. But,
Who did he play?
He plays Sam Rockwell. But I think the problem with Sam Rockwell is, in terms of finding an athlete that would play him, he shows too much of a sensitive side to his character that I don't think many athletes have a sensitive side because of what they do, or at least they don't exhibit that. So I struggle to pick an athlete that would.
Yeah, moving on. Mason?
I mean, how my film was The Lighthouse, I was pretty I couldn't choose many roles to be replaced. I couldn't bring myself to replace Robert Pattinson or Willem Dafoe's characters because so I went for Maria Sharapova as the mermaid from Lighthouse. I feel like she's come to an end in her tennis career at the moment, so she's got quite a lot of spare time. And I feel like she's always sort of been the supporting actress to Serena, so I feel like a background.
You don't feel that role is kind of degrading for a woman of her stature?
I think it would fit the role perfectly.
So I didn't want to answer, that's fine.
Okay, Ross?
427 hours to replace James Franco's character. I put Greg Rutherford. He's a long jumper, so I could see him just jumping around the rocks and stuff. He's the kind of guy I could picture running through a desert, to be fair. And also he's ginger. He's ginger, so he'll probably mess up at some point anyway. So
Fair enough. I've got Jofra Archer, England cricketing hero. He'd play the Donald Glover role. He's got the charisma to own the room like Donald does in that scene when he's showing them how to refuel the spaceship and whatnot. So yeah. Oh, and also the final award before I forget, Actor of the Week for each of you. So across the 4 films, who do you think gave the best performance? Mason?
I've got back Robert Pattinson. I think him and Willem Dafoe, like both very good in the film, but for me, Robert Pattinson just delivered even more. I was shocked to see him do such an amazing role. I feel like I haven't seen a film of him since Twilight, so it was it's quite refreshing to see such a change.
May?
I think out of all the films, the only one that I didn't really question whether it was an actor or not, like, you know, when you think someone's like, you think about them being an actor, like the only person I actually thought was like, I felt I didn't need to question that throughout was Sam Rockwell. I remember watching Robert Pattinson and I was thinking like, how would you even act to do this? And I just felt like it was really good. It's just like, I thought about that stuff like that less with Sam Rockwell.
Ross?
It was a tough one between Matt Damon and Willem Dafoe, but I went for Willem Dafoe. I thought how it's amazing how he gets you so scared of him purely based on Lobster, and I think for that scene alone where he crawls like a dog and gets dirt thrown on his face, it's just top class, top shelf shit.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is kind of a unique week, having all the films being actors who are having to do a lot of work, either on their own or just with one other person in a kind of enclosed environment. So I think it's all, no one's giving a weak performance, pretty much.
No.
The films, I don't think. But I've gone for Sam Rockwell. I said earlier, I think it's one of the best performances I've seen in recent times. Just the ability to portray you kind of fighting with a version of yourself whilst also seemingly losing your mind, doing all that work in that kind of environment. I thought it was just some of the best acting you can see. So Sam Rockwell's my pick. And with that, brings an end to our first edition of the Corona Cinema podcast. Next week, our theme is American movies, which films with American in the title. So thank you to Mason.
Cheers. See you later.
Thanks to May.
And you?
And thanks to Ross.
See you later.
I've been Leon Waite. Goodbye.